In today's lecture, we're going to focus on punctuation for the first time. So in this section, we've been focusing purely on grammar, but grammatical range and accuracy, that IELTS band descriptor category, it does specifically mention punctuation as one of the important elements of achieving a band 7 and above score. It needs to be fairly accurate and effective punctuation. So in this lecture, I'm going to be talking to you about some of the most common mistakes that are made with regards to punctuation, and hopefully by the end of this lecture you may recognize a couple of the things that you might be doing wrong with your punctuation, and you'll know how to correct those things. So let's get started. Again, that typical question, why is this important? Why is punctuation important? Well, punctuation is more important than you might realize. With punctuation, we can help the reader to understand how a particular sentence should be read, and we can also help to clarify meaning. Now, this is more important, as I said, than you might realize, because without punctuation, or if we use incorrect punctuation, serious problems can arise. Have a look at these three pictures to see what I mean. Compare those sentences. Let's eat grandpa versus let's eat grandpa. Of course, you want the second sentence there. You really don't want to be eating grandpa. So that comma before you mention someone's name, that's what that's for. I like cooking my family and my pets. I really hope not. In this case, we needed commas after cooking and my family, okay? Because we're writing a list. In that place, another two commas are essential. And in this case, apostrophe usage and spelling all wrong. Your dinner versus your dinner. One leaves you nourished, the other leaves you dead. So, as it says there, correct grammar and correct punctuation saves lives. So, 3 punctuation points that I want to talk about today. Firstly, commas, then apostrophes, then capital letters. So firstly, commas. Commas in English are notoriously difficult to use. I know a lot of people struggle with them. However, there are some rules which make comma usage simpler and easier to understand and apply. For essay writing, task 2 essays, the following 4 rules are going to be the most relevant to us. Use a comma after a dependent clause that starts a sentence. Let's have a look at what that looks like. To avoid overpopulation in cities, the countryside must be developed. So the dependent clause here is to avoid overpopulation in cities. By dependent clause, we just mean that to avoid overpopulation in cities cannot exist on its own. It's dependent on another part of the sentence. It cannot exist by itself. It wouldn't make sense. However, notice that if we swap the sentence around, then we no longer need the comma. The countryside must be developed to avoid overpopulation in cities. That way round, there would be no comma. So you use a comma after a dependent clause that starts a sentence. Use a comma before any coordinating conjunction that links to independent clauses. By coordinating conjunction, we're talking about words like and, but, because, yet, and things like that. So, the government must give doctors a higher salary, comma, and they must also provide quality facilities. So you can see the 2 independent clauses here. The government must give doctors a higher salary. That's an independent clause, can exist on its own. And they must also provide quality facilities. That's an independent clause. It can survive on its own. So if you're combining 2 independent clauses with a coordinating conjunction like and, make sure you use a comma before that coordinating conjunction. This is probably the least important rule. A lot of people miss this rule and it doesn't really affect the sentence, but it really can help to improve the fluency of your writing. Use commas to separate items in a list. This is probably the most common and easy to apply use of the comma. Teachers have to prepare classes, comma, mark homework, comma, and attend many meetings. Notice that there are 2 commas here rather than 1. We're going to talk about this in a moment. Let's have a look at the 4th use. Use a comma after introductory cohesive devices. So this is for expressions like, for example, to begin with, finally, as a consequence. Make sure that you do not use a comma after expressions like, there is no doubt that, or this is because. These do not need a comma. So to return to that 3rd point, the final comma in the sentence with the list, teachers have to prepare classes, mark homework, and attend many meetings, the final comma there is called an Oxford comma. It is an optional addition, but it can help to avoid confusion at times. So you don't have to have that 2nd comma, but it can really, really help. So a lot of academics use it. It's up to you though. Let's move on from the commas and think about apostrophes. Now there are 2 main instances where apostrophes are commonly used. Possessives, such as Mary's pen, Mary owns the pen, it's Mary's pen, and contractions, Mary's here, Mary is here. So where we're contracting a subject and an auxiliary verb together to create one word. However, we must not use contractions in essay writing because it's very informal, so we will only focus on the former usage of apostrophes here, which is possessives. So how do we use apostrophes with possessives, and what are the common mistakes that people make? Well, for a singular noun, nice and easy, you just add an apostrophe plus s, and then you have formed the possessive. It is the government's responsibility. Government apostrophe s, nice and simple. For singular and plural nouns which end in s, only use an apostrophe, not another s. So let's have a look at some examples. Employee happiness is the boss's responsibility. Notice here that we're not choosing to add another s on the end of boss, just the apostrophe is enough. And the behavior of children is their parents' responsibility. Same case here, no extra s, we already have the s, so it's just apostrophe, and then you move on to the noun. For irregular plural nouns, add an apostrophe plus s at the end of the plural noun to form a possessive. So what does that look like? Children's, so you've got an irregular plural noun here, child, not to childs, but to children. And so in this case, we do want the apostrophe plus s. Children's backgrounds determine their success, not children's apostrophe and no s backgrounds. Finally, do not use an apostrophe to pluralize a regular noun. We won't use apostrophes when we're trying to pluralize things, only when we're trying to create possessives. So the world contains many different culture apostrophe s? No. The world contains many different cultures, just an s, no apostrophe. Finally, let's talk about using capital letters. Again, another area where a lot of people make mistakes, but generally capital letters are always used at the beginning of a sentence and when referring to what are called proper nouns. For example, geographical places, names, institutions, etc. Now the latter of these usages, the proper nouns, tends to cause the most difficulty. Let's see what your ability is like here. Where would you place capital letters in these sentences? Welcome to Oxford University. Many people go to Oxford to see the university there. It is the government's responsibility. It is the responsibility of the UK government. Now, before you answer this question, I really want you to think about whether each noun is a proper noun or if it's just a general noun. Okay, so have a go, see if you can work out where the capital letters go, and continue the video when you're ready. Hopefully you have something that looks like this. Of course, the beginning of the sentences always have capital letters, but notice the rest. Welcome to Oxford University. You can even hear it in the way that it's said. This is a proper noun, it's an actual place, it's an institution. Welcome to Oxford University, capitalizing both of those nouns there. Look at the second sentence. Many people go to Oxford, yes, Oxford, because it's a geographical place, to see the university there. The university is not capitalized because we are not talking about an institution. If we wanted to talk about it in terms of the institution, we'd need to give it its full name, which is Oxford University, and then we would capitalize that. Next sentence. It is the government's responsibility. Again, capitalizing the first letter, but we're not capitalizing government because we haven't given it the full name. But if you contrast that with the final sentence, it is the responsibility of the UK government. You've got that nice full sounding institution, and because of that we're going to capitalize the G in government as well, of course, as the UK. Finally, let's look at this all together. I'm going to give you a paragraph now, and in the paragraph there will be 11 punctuation errors. Can you find them all? So here's the paragraph. Now, I want you to read this paragraph, then pause the video, try to find as many errors as you can. As I said, there are 11 punctuation errors altogether. Then when you think you've found them all, press play and we'll see if you've got them right. Okay, let's have a look then. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Okay, so hopefully you've got the same one. We want to firstly remove a comma, then we want to add a comma, we want to remove an apostrophe, we want to turn an uppercase letter into a lowercase letter, then remove an apostrophe, then add a comma, then capitalize the T, then add a comma after problem, then use a lowercase g in government, then remove the comma after this, then add an apostrophe after people and before S. If you got all of those right, you should have a paragraph which looks like this. And if you did so, fantastic. All of those rules that we were talking about before have been absorbed and applied to this paragraph. If you struggled with that a bit, I would suggest going back to the beginning of the video, checking it out again, and maybe doing a little bit more research and practice with punctuation. Either way, I hope that this lecture has been helpful as always, and I will see you in the next one.